Episode 70 is a follow up of episode 69. So I kindly request you to first listen to episode 69 to connect with our discussion in episode 70. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Yes, I was actually coming to that point, as you mentioned about the aggression of China.
Yeah.
And we have seen, of course, the environmental losses and everything that is happening due to the military presence is something that I think we have to organize a different, basically, episode on that.
Right.
But yeah, just from a general perspective, how does the military presence of different nations in the Indo-Pacific affect security dynamics?
Okay. I think the military presence of different nations in the Indo-Pacific. So this military presence becomes very important, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. So the military presence of different nations in the Indo-Pacific significantly influences the region's security dynamics, especially by shaping power balances, or so to say, balance of power. It also, shapes deterrence strategies and regional alliances. For example, U.S. military presence has always been there in the Indo-Pacific. Earlier, it was called Asia Pacific, right? So the U.S. Maintains a robust military presence in the Indo-Pacific with key bases in, as we know, in Japan, in South Korea, Guam, Philippines for that matter. So this military presence is a part of its, larger or say broader strategy to ensure free and open Indo-Pacific and also to deter political aggression, which we already talk about, which is China, and reassure its allies, and partners. Um, and this military, what do you call it, presence has also kind of developed into an alliances such as we have already talked about Quad, AUKUS. So this kind of uh, alliances strengthen regional security cooperation, interoperability among allied powers or allied forces for that matter. So the military presence of US is done through FONOPS, right? The Freedom of Navigation Operations. So US, as we know, it has been regularly conducting FONOPS in the South China Sea to challenge, of course, Beijing's territorial claim and its assert and assert international maritime rights. So this kind of operation, which is FONOPS, it aims to uphold principles of international law and ensure unimpeded passage through critical sea lanes, etc., etc. Of course, and also to counter maritime militia and coast guard of China, because China, I mean, as I'm sure you must be also following about how, in the name of marine scientific research, they are already entering Indian Ocean region and, trying to assert its claim, um, trying to harass fishermen and so on and so forth. So all this strategic naval deployment, right? It's really important, especially even for India. So for example, India has enhanced its naval presence in the Indian Ocean region and beyond, focusing mostly on the strategic choke points, which I've mentioned, like Strait of Malacca, and especially for India, Andaman and Nicobar Islands are very important. So this kind of presence, a kind of counterbalance Beijing's influence to ensure, security in the maritime routes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite, I would say, intensive, I would say, from the security dynamics.
Hmm.
And I think we have just discussed all the military presence, the security dynamics aspect, as well as the legal side as well.
Right.
UNCLOS. I was going to ask you about UNCLOS later on, but I think, yeah, we have already passed that question. So, yeah,
Yes.
coming down to the economic factors, because I believe anything and everything in the geopolitical world is related to
Yes.
economics.
Hmm.
So, what role do economic factors such as trade routes and resources play in the Indo-Pacific maritime security?
Yeah, I think the economic factors in the Indo-Pacific plays a very important role, especially you know, as I was talking about the most important trade routes, or so to say, the choke points in the Indo-Pacifics are like the the Papal Mentep, uh, Strait of Malacca, Lombok Strait, Taiwan Strait, Strait of Hormuz, and so on and so forth, right? So this ensuring that this trade routes, this critical maritime choke points is very important in the Indo-Pacific region because these waterways are vital for global trade, right? Like as I've mentioned earlier, like this global, this waterways actually, uh, they have a significant portion of the world's maritime commerce, including energy supplies passing through them. So um, when you talk about Indo-Pacific, South China Sea also comes. So South China Sea, for instance, like I've already mentioned, it carries one third of the global shipping. So another important factor is, like most of the countries are economically interdependent, right? So for example, the economies of many Indo-Pacific nations are heavily reliant on maritime trade. For example, countries like Japan, South Korea, China, and even India, right? Like they depend on secure sea lanes for their import and export of goods, energy resources, and raw materials, so on and so forth. So disruption of these maritime trade routes, uh, due to like piracy, territorial dispute, as I've mentioned in the South China Sea, or due to military confrontations, it could have a severe economic repercussion, not only for regional economies, but also for global markets. So therefore, therefore, it's important to maintain this, critical maritime choke points. Um, when it comes to like natural resources, right? Energy security is very important. Like, what are the energy security that passes through this critical choke points? The For example, oil, natural gas, minerals. All this actually are very important. Like for example, the South China Sea in particular, right, is believed to hold significant amount of gas reserves, making it a
Yes.
focal point for territorial claims and like resource exploration. So therefore, securing access to these resources becomes critical for energy security. Um, Not just for China, but for India, which has a growing demand for energy to sustain its economic development. So ensuring the security of energy supply routes is equally important for not just India, but for, like other nations in the Indo-Pacific region. So another factor is like fisheries, which I have already talked about, IUU fishing, um, so many economic partnerships, trade agreements that have taken place. So all this, all this will be impacted if the critical, maritime choke points are not secure. Therefore, I would say that economic factors plays a crucial role in shaping Indo-Pacific maritime security, because the strategic importance of the trade routes that I've mentioned about, which have access to natural resources and economic influence, through infrastructure and partnerships, all this contribute to regions complex security dynamics that we were talking about earlier. So therefore, ensuring this, security of all this economic interest becomes vital for stability, peace, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific, influencing the actions and policies of regional and global players for that matter. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of, because we were speaking about the economic factors,
Mm.
so we have seen recently like alliances like Quad. So how do alliances like Quad influence the security landscape in the region? Because I have also personally observed the fact that Quad is not just now concentrating only on maritime security, but they are gradually even moving towards a defense cooperation as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so, from your perspective, how does it influence the security landscape in the region?
Yes, this is very interesting and very debatable also because, like you mentioned, no, Quad's supposed to be only, HADR,
Yeah,
but now it's moving into a security dimension. So this Quad, I mean, it's an informal strategic forum. It's a grouping that focuses specifically on promoting free and inclusive Indo-Pacific. I mean, as we all know, unlike a formal alliance that operates as a strategic dialogue, which includes regular summit, information sharing and military exercises, but does not entail binding mutual defense commitments. So it's supposed to be only HADR, kind of forum, but now it's moving into like what has already, what is doing military exercises and all, right? Like as we see. So um, I would say Quad also engages with ASEAN countries to kind of align their interests and efforts towards, maintaining regional stability and addressing, shared challenges such as maritime security, counterterrorism, disaster relief, and so on and so forth. So, like I've mentioned, Quad military exercises and agreement, have been increasing, and there's, like I mentioned, like there's joint exercises that's happening among the Quad countries and with other members, with other allies as well, to enhance interoperability and also to demonstrate their collective effort to regional security. The you know the I mean the example is Malabar exercise, right? So originally it was a bilateral exercise that happened between US and India only, but now it includes the Quad countries, like basically,
yeah,
focusing on naval drills, anti-submarine warfares, maritime security
yeah,
operations. And we also see that there's like, they have all of them have signed, all the Quad countries have signed logistic agreements as well,
yeah,
right? India has signed a logistic support agreement with all the Quad countries, allowing them to use each other's military bases for refueling, repair, replenishment, and so on and so forth. So this kind of agreement enhances operational flexibility and also sustainment of capabilities for joint missions and exercises. So, I mean, a lot of development that's happening, and I think we need to closely watch, how this minilateral, trilateral, and Quad, all this kind of initiatives turn into, for example, US and India have been strengthening their, the defense partnership through several initiatives, like US is providing India with GF414 engines for its indigenous fighter aircraft. These engines will be used for Tejas MK2. I mean, I'm not a tech expert, but these are certain development that I can see between India and US also under the Quad partnership, right? Um,
yes,
and India is also, I mean, India has already procured, I think they have already procured Boeing P-81, which is a maritime surveillance aircraft from the US. Um, as I can, as I remember, like there's India is acquiring 31 MQ-9B Reaper drones from the US. So, so all these developments are happening, like this defense agreement and military collaboration, right? That actually will signify a deepening strategic partnership between US and India, which will, kind of counter a common threat, which is, of course, China, to ensure stability in the Indo-Pacific region. So therefore, like the Quad's engagement with ASEAN members, like now coming back to ASEAN, and Quad's engagement with ASEAN and other regional partners, underscore this kind of commitment to rules-based international order, or say like collective security. So I think I think we just have to closely watch, the development as we, yeah.
yes. And I mean, like, This question, I would say, we can possibly organize a separate podcast on this question. But yeah,
Yeah,
you can try to keep it as brief as possible because we have touched upon several aspects like defense, security, economic
yes,
aspect. So just to kind of briefly touch upon this issue, how does environmental security, including issues like illegal fishing, marine pollution, intersect with geopolitical dynamics in the region? Because of course the Indo-Pacific region, even though there are like several amount of resources that are there, several
right.
like vast amount of illegal activities like smuggling and all are still carried out. So
Yeah,
from that perspective, from the environmental security perspective, how does it intersect with the geopolitical dynamics from your perspective?
yes. I think this question is like very important. At the same time, it's kind of overlapping with earlier conversation because it is intersecting with the geopolitical dynamics in the Indo-Pacific region, right? So
Yes.
environmental security issues, like you have mentioned, illegal fishing, marine pollution for that matter, these are deeply intertwined with geopolitical dynamics in the Indo-Pacific. And these issues not only impact geopolitical sustainability, but also have a significant economic, social, and political, for that matter, right? That influence the stability in the Indo-Pacific region. So when you talk about the economic impact, so IU fishing actually threatens the livelihood of millions of people, like in the Indian Ocean region, in the Pacific Ocean. So who are solely dependent on fishing as their income or like as their food security. So the depletion of fish stocks due to IU fishing actually undermines economies and can lead to even like poverty or social unrest for that matter. So therefore, IU fishing is often conducted by vessels from countries with distant water fishing fleets, leading to conflict over maritime boundaries and fishing rights, which keeps on happening, between China and Philippines and China and Vietnam. For example, the Chinese fishing fleets have been frequently accused of, encroaching into the EEZs of Southeast Asian countries, specifically Vietnam and Philippines, causing diplomatic dispute and heightening, regional tensions. As we know, as we speak, there's always tension happening in the South China Sea. So, therefore, to counter IU fishing, countries in the region are enhancing maritime patrols capability and increasing cooperation through initiatives like a regional plan of action to combat IU fishing, which is called RPOA IUU. So when this IU fishing happens, like, there are military and strategic responses to it. Like, for example, some countries are leveraging their naval and coast guard forces, right, to combat IU fishing, integrating their efforts into broader maritime security strategies. We also know that IBMDA, Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness. We also have fusion centers such as fusion centers in Singapore, fusion centers in Gurugram in India, right? In Gurugram. It's called Gurugram. I always say it's Gurugram, right? But it's now
Yeah,
Gurugram.
yeah.
I
Yes,
always
yes.
have this, but I'd still say like it's Gurugram because it's used to the old name.
Yeah.
So we have such kind of fusion centers, right? To kind of advance technologies and also like doing joint patrols, satellite monitoring to detect and deter illegal activities. So a lot of initiatives are being undertaken. So therefore, like, of course, environmental security issues like illegal fishing and marine pollution are critical components of the geopolitical landscape. Like I said, they not only impact the ecological and economic well-being of the region, but also influence international politics, leading to cooperation and conflicts among the nations. Therefore, addressing this kind of challenges, right, IU fishing and marine pollution requires a multifaceted approach through robust legal frameworks, technology innovation, I would say, strong enforcement mechanism. These are very important. So by tackling environmental security issue, countries in the Indo-Pacific can enhance, regional stability, and build stronger political ties. And in fact, I also wrote an article with uh, one of my colleague. He is Commodore Dipesh Lahiri. We wrote an article on MDA, Maritime Domain Awareness, and we one of the recommendation which we gave on this article was, to since India is a Quad member, a focus effort should be made to establish information sharing mechanism between the recently announced IPMDA, which is Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness, which is geographically aligned with the area of responsibility of the US Indo-PACOM, which is Indo-PACOM, and countries in the ASEAN, which have maritime information gathering or sharing or analyzing capabilities, regarding the National Coast Guard Watch, which is called NCWC in the Philippines, the Maritime Enforcement Coordination Center in Thailand, right? The Sea Security Coordination Center, which is called Bakamla in Indonesia, the information sharing centers, ISC or RECAP, and the information fusion center, both in Singapore and in India, which I already talked about, and the Piracy Reporting Center, PRC, and International Maritime Bureau, which is IMB in Malaysia. So this IPMDA, which is Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness, would actually provide complete domain information on the maritime areas of interest, both for India, ASEAN, or Indo-Pacific countries, right? So, however, like intergovernmental information sharing agreements between the member countries of the Quad or ASEAN or any Indo-Pacific countries to protect the confidentiality of information would be prerequisite for information sharing. So, I think this is one of the recommendation that we gave, you know, when we wrote an article for Routledge. So yeah, if anyone is interested in reading this article,
Yeah.
it's in the book edited by Prabir Day. It's called 30 Years of ASEAN-India Relation Towards Indo-Pacific. So we have talk about the IPMDA, specifically the maritime domain awareness. It's MDA is very the perspective of MDA varies from countries to countries. ASEAN countries MDA is different. India's MDA is in the US MDA is different. So again, if you're interested, you can read this book to get a larger perspective. Yeah.
Interesting. I think you already mentioned the policy measures that countries can basically adopt on the maritime security domain. Briefly, I think in this answer.
Right.
And yeah, I think as you mentioned about the book, I think definitely I'll be happy to use this link and insert it in our podcast description so that people can basically read the article and your perspective as an extended perspective on this topic as well.
Yes.
And yeah, I think we are reaching the end of the podcast now at the moment.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what are the potential future trends in the Indo-Pacific maritime security domain?
Okay. I think from my perspective, I mean, this is like very simple. I'll just give it a very general because we are running out of time also. So I think from my perspective, adhering to rules-based order, right? Like international law, UNCLOS, um, to ensure that there is a safe and secure shipping, maritime shipping routes. Um, Also to do, continue to engage with military cooperation, transfer of technology, information sharing, which I just mentioned, coordination among the fusion centers, um, and also the cooperation, the defense cooperation between countries, especially I would say the defense cooperation between India and Vietnam and Philippines is very important. India has already already sent its promos to Vietnam. Philippines is interested in buying promos from India. So all this kind of development, all this kind of military cooperation, information sharing, these are very important factors, for enhancing maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region.
Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of questions which have popped in the conversation, and I hope to create a few more episodes with you, especially related to the environmental security aspect of the Indo-Pacific.
Right.
But yeah, as this last question, as I mentioned previously in the beginning of the podcast,
Mm.
it is not related to our topic basically, but I believe every expert who comes on this podcast
Yeah.
has something to offer in terms of insights or a guidance to the student researchers or or the experts who are trying to make their way or trying to enhance the research or trying to completely step into the new domain like the maritime security research.
Mm.
So from that perspective, as an expert in this domain, as a researcher who has been working for so long, so what message would you like to give to the researchers, students, and experts working in the maritime security domain?
Okay. I would say there's a lot of development that's happening in Indo-Pacific region, and I would like right now the focus is on the critical emerging technology, like critical minerals,
Yes.
critical emerging technology. I mean, you are expert in tech. This ISET, right? ISET initiative between India and US that focuses on advancing cooperation in technological sector, like including space, which you are already expert on, advanced telecommunications such as 5G, 6G. So this initiatives, I think it's important to keep a track on this kind of initiatives. Like for example, the ISR, NISAR, all this radar technology, which I'm not expert, but I'm also now kind of reading up a lot because I think right now um, the new development that's happening, I would say, is the space industry, right? There's
Yes.
a lot of development that's happening in space industry, which are actually, when you talk about space industry, which are actually instrument for climate change studies as well, right? Like
Yeah.
uh, environmental monitoring through remote sensing, and so on and so forth. So I would say for me, I myself also, I'm very interested in now critical technology, space industry. So I would say like, to focus more on key areas such as advanced telecommunication, which I already talk about, space technology, emerging areas such as SATCOM, Earth observation. And I think right now, a very interesting area, key area is space situational awareness. I'm sure you're
Yes.
aware about it, So
Yeah.
this is something which I'm really interested in. And for students or experts who are interested in this kind of initiatives or development working on in space industry or maritime security, I think it's important to keep a track because these are all interrelated. Maritime
Yeah.
security, when you talk about maritime security, you have to talk about MDA, you have to talk about economic, you have to also know about the geopolitics, which are quite intertwined with all these areas that I spoke about. um, so I would say that it's important to keep a track on all this development, this kind of partnerships that's happening between India and US, India and Indo-Pacific countries. This will not only benefit like countries. This kind of development will not only benefit countries, but also contribute largely to regional security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. So I would say I'm also keeping a watch on this space industry, which is currently an emerging key areas. So keep a watch on all this development, and I think it will be very useful for both researchers, students, and experts working on this area. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Apila. And it was a great conversation. I hope we record few more episodes in the future because quite a lot of questions have popped up in between. And I'm pretty sure the audience will be definitely asking me a lot of questions.
Right.
So, yeah, looking forward to recording few more episodes in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Omkar. Thank you so much. Yeah.